Sebastian Loeb, der Titelverteidiger im Citroen C4, dagegen auf Rang 3, 28 Sekunden hinter dem Spitzenreiter.
This incredible driver has fought all the way back into the rally lead. So the world champion on the brink of a performance that could top all those amazing wins that have come before.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today is the first of a new type of video I plan to release now and then, and basically I'm going to just share with you cars that are cool, in my opinion, that nobody else seems to be talking about. Now today we're going to be talking about the Citroen C4 Loeb edition. Now you might be thinking, the Citroen C4? That's not very cool. Well, actually the Citroen C4 is one of the most successful cars ever made, really, when it comes to motorsport and rally. And if you know anything about me and my taste in cars, most of my cars have a bit of rally heritage. I just happen to be drawn to that type of car. So we're going to quickly talk about why the C4 rally car, then the WRC one, is so successful. Then we're going to talk about the C4 Loeb edition, which is the road car, a limited edition one. We're going to talk about why it's probably have gone under the radar, and then I'm going to show you what I think people are not appreciating about that particular car. So first things first then, the C4 WRC car. What is so special about that? Now, it would be impossible to talk about the C4 WRC car without talking about Sebastian Loeb. Now, Sebastian Loeb has the record for the most consecutive WRC championship wins. That stands at 9. So for 9 years he won in a row. That's pretty impressive, I'm sure you'll agree. Now, for 4 of them years he was actually in a Citroen C4. So yeah, you'd think, wow, a lot of heritage there. What better heritage could you have, really? So the C4 actually won the 2007 Drivers' Championship when it was introduced. Then in 2008 it won the Constructors' Championships and the Drivers' Championship. 2009 it won the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship. In 2010 it won the Construction Championship and the Drivers' Championship before it was ultimately replaced by the DS3. So I'm sure you'll agree then that for its whole rally existence it was a very successful car. So Citroen, to celebrate this success, they released a special model of the Citroen C4, and that was called the Citroen C4 Loeb edition. Now, to have Sebastian Loeb's name on the back, bearing in mind he's one of the most successful racing drivers that's ever walked the earth, you'd imagine they went to town on that car. Limited slip differential, maybe 4-wheel drive, turbo. No, none of that, which is kind of why it's flown under the radar, I suppose. Basically, they just had the existing cars, what they already had, and they painted it red and they painted the wheels white. So, oh, and they put a spoiler on there, and I think they might have had a particular type of fabric on the seats, but it's not like they're bucket seats or anything. So, you could be saying, like most people did back then, well, that's underwhelming, and most people just stop there and they don't look at the car any further. Well, I think they're missing out. I think you're missing out if you're in the market for a cheap track car or an interesting car to build as a project. Now, as we know, journalists love a Peugeot GTI. Obviously there was a couple of apparently warm hatches in the middle, but generally speaking they go down quite well. Well, the Citroen C4 is ultimately a Peugeot. So when it comes to brakes, handling and the chassis, you're starting from a very good base. Now, the Citroen comes with one of 4 engines. So you had the 1.6 diesel, which we're not even going to talk about. The 1.6 petrol. It's a very similar engine actually to the engine that was in a 106 GTI. So it's a 1.6 naturally aspirated engine. It actually has larger valves, but the cam profile is less aggressive, so less lift and duration. And ultimately the power comes down actually from a GTI. I think it's about 110 horsepower. I think it's mainly for emissions. But a set of cams, and that is a 160 brake horsepower engine. Not only that, it came in a 2-litre naturally aspirated engine. So if you like your Honda VTEC, but the prices are too high, consider the C4. It's got a, I think, 7,500 RPM it revs to. It's 180 horsepower naturally aspirated engine. You might not have heard of the engine in the C4, but everyone raves about 306 GTIs, Citroen Xara VTS, and it's the same engine. So you're getting a really solid engine there. But none of those engines are engines that I would be interested in personally if I was going to be building and purchasing a C4 Loeb. The engine I would go for is actually one of the lower powered engines, but it's a very capable engine. That is the THP 155 engine. Now that engine is actually the very first generation of the direct injection engine, which ultimately is in my 208 GTI by Peugeot Sport. Obviously there's been numerous revisions as time went on, but that car's about 6 or 7 times the price of a C4, so you can't really, you know, hold that against the C4. So what the engine does have going for it is it's direct injection for a start, so it's very efficient, and secondly, it's got a turbo. So what can you do to turbos? Well, you can up the power very easily. Okay, so we're going to look at eTuner's website now. They tend to specialise in remapping Peugeots, Citroens and all sorts of things like that. And they tend to document exactly every car that comes in, what they modify and the results, so we can have a look. So just looking on their website, this is a Citroen C4 VTS 1.6T. It's pretty much the same thing as a Loeb, but the VTS. It's just a different trim, but ultimately the same engine. So it says here, thanks to the French manufacturer, the Citroen C4 VTS 1.6T is a very promising platform for tuning. This is why I'm making this video. So with just a stage 2 tune, all it actually needed for that was an exhaust, so a sports cap most likely, and an intercooler, and the power went up from 158 horsepower to 215, and the torque from 270 to 360 Newton meters. So that's much more like it, isn't it? 220 odd horsepower. Now there is another one they've got on here, and here's the Citroen C4 Coupe. It's not technically a Loeb, but it's the same engine. Now this particular car, they didn't go down the route of fitting a big hybrid turbo. All they did was just literally pull the turbo off a DS3. So it's not even like, you know, a big turbo maxing out the engine. It's just a slightly larger factory fitted part of a different Citroen. And that particular turbo made 233 horsepower, and then it went to 323 Newton meters of torque. So now we're getting serious with the power, but this next one is sort of like end game, probably more power. Well, actually it's got more power than Sebastian Loeb's rally car. But before I go to that one, there is a middle point. Now if I was going to go and buy this car and build it, I would probably be going down the route of an RCZ R turbo. So you might get about 280 horsepower out of this engine, provided you kept the torque reasonable. You're not going to blow anything up. So that's probably where I would go with it. And imagine that, imagine you built a C4, all you need is a sports cat, a turbo off another Peugeot, and an intercooler, and you could be making the same horsepower as Sebastian Loeb's WRC car. Obviously we'd be down on torque, but you'd have the horsepower figures. Now this one is sort of end game really. It's like stage 4, stage 5, whatever stage you want it to be. It's basically fully forged with a big turbo on it. And if we scroll down, this is making 383 horsepower and 497 Newton meters of torque. So that just shows really, if you want to go down the route of forging it, what is actually possible with these cars. And all of that car there, and all of that tuning path, you know, it all starts at ultimately about 1,500 quid, maybe 2,000 if you want a really clean one. So if you're looking to buy or build a track car, or you want a project car, I would say consider the Citroen C4, especially the Loeb edition, only because I feel like Citroen done a bit of an injustice there by not, you know, putting a bit more effort into that car. Now, whilst I'm on the subject, this engine and gearbox very similar to the R56 Minis. So anything that goes on them, they're very, very similar. Now, we know how tunable Minis are. Well, just as tunable is this Citroen C4. So hopefully you've enjoyed that video. There's quite a few cars like that which I think go under the radar but have a lot of potential. I'd like to build a C4, but I have to be realistic. I only need one track car and I've got the 2.8 for that. So yeah, just a really cool car. If you like this type of video and you want to see what other gems I've got in my head which are probably not well known, well let me know in the comments and I will consider making another video showing you what cheap cars are out there which have a lot of potential as a track car or just a project car. So thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.